misleading the House might sound like a technical issue, but it is a matter of great importance. Our democracy is based on Parliament scrutinising legislation and holding the government to account for its actions. We proceed on the basis that what we are told by ministers is accurate. Parliament expects proactive candour and transparency. If what ministers tell us is not the truth, we can't do our job. Our democracy depends upon trust that what ministers tell MPs in the House of Commons is the truth. And without that trust, our entire parliamentary democracy is undermined. Everyone makes mistakes, and when ministers do, they're expected to correct it at the earliest opportunity, and that is what happens routinely. Inadvertent misleading, which is promptly corrected, is not an issue. The House understands if ministers decline to answer, for example, on matters which relate to national security or market sensitivity. But misleading intentionally or recklessly, or refusing to answer or failing to correct, impedes or frustrates the functioning of the House and is contempt. During the COVID pandemic, the Government and Parliament imposed extensive restrictions on our freedom in the interests of protecting public health. In this inquiry, we are not looking at the rights or wrongs of those COVID rules or guidance, or repeating the Partygate inquiry into the conduct of individual ministers and officials in number 10. What the House has mandated us to look at is whether Mr Johnson told the truth to Parliament to the best of his knowledge about number 10's compliance with those COVID rules and guidance. It is about the truth, and that is why this inquiry goes to the heart of the trust on which our system of accountability depends. This committee is comprised of members of Parliament who have been appointed to this role by the House of Commons. The political balance on this committee reflects the political balance in the House, which is why the committee comprises 4 Conservatives and 3 opposition MPs, including 2 from Labour and 1 from the SNP. Having said that, we leave our party interests at the door of the committee room and conduct our work in the interests of the House. That is what we're doing in this inquiry and what we will continue to do. We are examining what Mr Johnson said to the House about gatherings in number 10, whether what he said to the House was correct or not, whether, and if so, how quickly and comprehensively any misleading statement was corrected. If a statement was misleading, we will then consider whether that was a genuine error or if it was reckless or intentional, and whether the record was corrected in good time. We have already considered evidence supplied by the government, including emails, WhatsApp messages, and photos taken at the time, and written statements taken under oath from witnesses present at the relevant times, to inform us of what Mr Johnson would have known at the time of his statements to the House. There has been much comment about whether the committee is relying on the Sue Gray report material. We are not relying on any such material, and nor will we. Last November, we decided to collect direct, first-hand evidence from all the witnesses under oath, and this has all been disclosed to Mr Johnson. Sue Gray is not a witness. We have followed the standing orders of the House and the precedents as advised by our clerks, by Speaker's Counsel, and by Sir Ernest Ryder, a former Lord Justice of Appeal. We have not changed the rules or the procedure. That is not within our remit. They are laid down by the House, we are bound to follow them, and that is what we've done. In our report of the 3rd of March, we set out the main issues which we will be asking Mr Johnson about today. We'll be talking about rules and guidance, since Mr Johnson told the House number 10 complied with both. When we refer to rules, we mean regulations laid down by the House, which have the force of law, and under which fixed penalty notices were issued. Guidance is guidance issued by the government. For example, when Mr Johnson was talking about hands, face, space, He was referring to the guidance on social distancing when he said space. On the basis of information that is in the public domain and evidence the committee has received, and in the context of what Mr Johnson said to the House of Commons, we will be establishing what rules and guidance relating to COVID were in force at the relevant time, Mr Johnson's knowledge of those rules and guidance, Mr Johnson's attendance at or knowledge of gatherings that were not socially distanced and those for which fixed penalty notices were issued. Mr Johnson spoke about the question of COVID compliance in number 10 in the House of Commons more than 30 times, most particularly on the 1st of December 2021, the 8th of December 2021 and the 25th of May 2022. I'd like us all to have a reminder now of some of what Mr Johnson said in Parliament in answer to questions, starting, if we may, with a question from the Leader of the Opposition on the 1st of December.
As millions of people were locked down last year, was a Christmas party thrown in Downing Street for dozens of people on December the 18th?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what I can tell the right honourable gentleman is that all guidance was followed completely during number 10. But I repeat, Mr. Speaker, that I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken, and that is what I have been repeatedly assured. I apologise for the impression that has been given that staff in Downing Street take this less than seriously. I'm sickened myself and furious about that. But I repeat what I have said to him, that I have been repeatedly assured that the rules were not broken.
The Prime Minister has been caught red-handed. Why doesn't he end the investigation right now by just admitting it?
Because, Mr. Speaker, I've been repeatedly assured that no rules were broken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister tell the House whether there was a party in Downing Street on the 13th of November?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no, but I'm sure that whatever happened, the guidance was followed and the rules were followed at all times. And I'm happy to set on the record now that when I came to this House and said in all sincerity that the rules and guidance had been followed at all times, it was what I believed to be true. It was certainly the case when I was present at gatherings to wish staff farewell, and the House will note that my attendance at these moments, brief as it was, has not been found to be outside the rules. But clearly this was not the case for some of those gatherings after I had left, and at other gatherings when I was not even in the building.
Thank you. We need to understand why Mr Johnson said to Parliament that no rules or guidance were broken in number 10 when we have evidence that he knew what the rules and guidance were and that he was present at gatherings where those rules and guidance were breached. We have yet to reach our conclusions in this inquiry, and we will not do so until we have heard and considered Mr Johnson's evidence today. The evidence that we have already raises clear questions, and this is Mr Johnson's opportunity to give us his answers. Will the clerk to the committee please administer the oath?
I'm going to take the Bible and read out the terms of the oath.
Yes, I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give for this committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much.
Mr Johnson, you provided the committee with a written submission which the committee has published. Do you confirm that the contents of that statement are true?
I do.
Thank you. Mr Johnson, please make your opening statement.
Thank you, Chair. If I can, before I begin, I'm conscious that we're all expected to vote in a few minutes, I think at 2:21. I hope you don't mind if I resume. I mean, it will break up what I'm about to say.
Well, we're a parliamentary committee and Parliament is continuing. If there is a vote called, which we do expect, I will suspend the sitting to enable members to vote and we can pick up from where we left off. But thanks for reminding everybody that that's what's going to be happening.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you've just said, there were a number of days over a period of 20 months when gatherings took place in Downing Street that went past the point where they could be said to be necessary for work purposes. That was wrong. I bitterly regret it. I understand public anger and I continue to apologise for what happened on my watch, and I take full responsibility. But as you've just said, Chair, the purpose of this inquiry is not to reopen so-called Partygate. It is to discover whether or not I lied to Parliament, wittingly misled colleagues and the country about what I knew and believed about those gatherings when I said that the rules and the guidance had been followed at number 10. I'm here to say to you, hand on heart, that I did not lie to the House. When those statements were made, they were made in good faith and on the basis of what I honestly knew and believed at the time. When this inquiry was set up, I was completely confident that you would find nothing to show I knew or believed anything else, as indeed you have not. I was confident, not because there's been some kind of cover-up, I was confident because I knew that is what I believed, and that is why I said it. To understand why I believed it, you have to go back to a time before the Sue Gray report, before the police investigation, back to a time where, as the evidence before the committee shows, there was a near universal belief at number 10 that the rules and guidance were being complied with. That is the general belief that has been uncovered by your evidence, and it was that belief that governed what I said in the House. And as soon as it was clear that I was wrong, and as soon as the Sue Gray investigation and the Metropolitan Police investigation had concluded, I came to the House of Commons and I corrected the record as I promised I would. I clearly could not have anticipated the outcome by coming earlier, because I genuinely did not know what the outcome would be and was deeply shocked when fines were issued, not least since I had been told on a couple of occasions at least by Sue Gray that she did not think the threshold of criminality had been reached. I believe that the committee's work helps to explain why I was so shocked. You've been investigating this for more than 10 months, and I thank you for what you have done. You have had access to a vast body of evidence. You have collected and reviewed hundreds of pages of transcripts of Sue Gray's interviews, and you have analysed many thousands of contemporary emails and WhatsApp messages and other material. You found nothing to show that I was warned in advance that events in number 10 were illegal. In fact, nothing to show that anyone raised anxieties with me about any event, whether before or after it had taken place. If there had been such anxiety about a rule-breaking event at number 10, it would unquestionably have been escalated to me. We all knew how vital it was to maintain public confidence in the fight against COVID, that we should do what we were asking the public to do. There's only one exception, of course, and that's the testimony of Dominic Cummings, which is unsupported by any documentary evidence and which plainly cannot be relied upon. He has every motive to lie. Not only has the committee found nothing incriminating, it has gathered a huge amount of evidence which demonstrates very clearly that those working in number 10 shared my belief that the rules and the guidance were being followed, and that I received assurances that there was no rule breaking at number 10. The best and fairest course now would be for the committee to publish all the evidence it has assembled, so that Parliament and public can judge for themselves. Despite my repeated requests, the committee has refused to do this. As investigator, prosecutor, judge and jury, it has elected only to publish the evidence which it considers incriminating and not the evidence which I rely on and which answers the charges. And despite assurances that we would be permitted to add material that we rely on into the core bundle published today, late last night we were told that the committee was not willing to publish a large number of extracts which I rely upon in my defence. That is manifestly unfair. Instead, and in the absence of any evidence that I deliberately misled Parliament, the committee is trying to mount an argument that I must have known that the guidance was not being followed and that I buried in my head as we were fighting COVID was an unarticulated belief that even if we were following the rules, we were somehow failing to follow the guidance. And you have in your fourth report suggested that it must have been obvious to me because you have the photographs. So let me deal with this point head on, because it is nonsense. These photos have now been churned through the media for more than a year, and it seems to be the view of the committee and sadly many members of the public that they show me attending rule-breaking parties where no one was social distancing. They show nothing of the kind. They show me giving a few words of thanks at a work event for a departing colleague. They show me with my red box passing on the way to another meeting or heading back into my flat to carry on working often late into the night. They show a few people standing together as permitted by the guidance where full social distancing is not possible and where mitigating measures are taken. They show events which I was never fined for attending. I know the public will have had the impression that these were covert photos with their sinister pixelations that have been obtained by the media. The vast majority were in fact taken by the official number 10 photographer. To say that we would have held illicit events in number 10 while allowing these events to be immortalised by an official photographer is staggeringly implausible. There are a couple of photos where the event is captured on Zoom as well as by the official photographer, which only reinforces the point. If we had an event that we believed was illicit or unauthorised, why would we have it on Zoom when you never quite know who is on the other side? Most important of all, if it was obvious to me that these events were contrary to the guidance and the rules, then it must have been equally obvious to dozens of others, including the most senior officials in the country, all of them, like me, responsible for drawing up the rules. And it must have been obvious to others in the building, including the current Prime Minister.
Order, order. We will now suspend the sitting whilst the House of Commons votes, and we will reconvene in 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Well, as we expected, there is the division bell that's calling MPs to vote. They've been discussing this Windsor framework. They've got to vote on that this afternoon. That's part of how the post-Brexit arrangements affect Northern Ireland. Should we not get too bogged down in that? Let's speak to our political editor, Chris Mason, who was listening to those introductory marks there by Harriet Harman, who's